I would like to welcome everybody to Succession Planning for a Strong Committee. I am Heather Wilson. I'm a Community Engagement Specialist for Church World Service, and I'm based in Michigan. And I cover walks from coast to coast for us. And I am going to say the other lady that you can see, Roberta Smith, she will be the third speaker today, and she is a Community Engagement Manager, and she is based in North Carolina. And with that, we are going to start the very first video, and it is Mary Long. And she is, excuse me, she is based in Pennridge, or she's not based, her crop hunger walk is Pennridge, Pennsylvania. Mary, during her video, will be speaking about her community engagement specialist, Teresa Cintron, and she's based in New Jersey.
Hi everyone, my name is Mary Long, and I was the event coordinator for the Pennridge Crop Hunger Walk in Percy, Pennsylvania for the past several years. And I am here to tell you my story on finding new leadership through faith. I hope that you find encouragement not just for your walk's future, but also just in life as well. So for those of you who don't know me, I am an advocate for journaling. And it's not like the childlike kind of Dear Diary kind of way. I love lists. So if you were to peek inside my journal, you would find pages filled with daily gratitude lists, lists on how I want to feel that day, habit trackers, and vision mapping. So vision mapping is like a vision board, but with a list. Vision boards, you cut out the pictures of magazines, you make a collage based on some kind of theme. But with vision mapping, it's goal setting and a plan for each goal. I do this both on a personal and a professional level every year. So every January, I sit down with my journal and I set my goals for my fall walk. And it starts with a list of goals like how much money we will raise, how many walkers and churches will participate, when we need to put out the posters, et cetera, et cetera. You get the idea. So then I take each goal and I break it down into monthly and then ultimately weekly goals. And that's how we keep track. And I know what actions need to be taken to reach the goal. So in 2019, changes were starting to happen in my personal life that I knew would eventually pull me away from my community. While mapping out my 2019 walk, I added a goal for finding a new coordinator to train and eventually take over. Then I set the intention and I prayed about it. And I prayed a lot about finding a new person. I used social media to put out a post that, that help was needed. Would follow up with that, pray some more, but still no help came. Then in 2020, I repeated the same course of action. I set an intention and I prayed some more. Then COVID hit and God said, look, you can lead your team from anywhere with this new thing called Zoom. I tried to incorporate virtual walkers into our walks in the past, so I was kind of familiar with the concept already. And now I find myself navigating this new ground and organizing a completely virtual event. I hope this would have been the wave of the future, and honestly, I thought my prayers were being answered. But I knew that people would eventually be craving face-to-face, so I continued to pray for a new walk leader for future walks. In the fall of 2020, my husband and I moved about an hour and a half away from Percy. Over the winter of 2021, my heart grew heavy. I knew I could not be the face of our walk. I could not be in person for team meetings, and I felt I could not insist on staying virtual. That wouldn't be fair. I had to step down, but I did not want to leave completely. That year, as I was mapping my goals, I included two things: finding a new coordinator for 2022, using 2021 to train and co-coordinate. And then step two would be to step down as coordinator and stay on as social media manager, which was part of what I was already doing anyway. I set the intention, I posted for help on social media, and each morning I prayed that this would happen. I would say, "Dear God, please send me a leader that I'm looking for. I can no longer serve these walks as I have in the past." And now put it on repeat day after day after day. Fast forward to late June. Our walk is now 4 months away. Materials would be arriving on my front porch in just a few short weeks, and still no sign. So one night over dinner, my husband and I were brainstorming walk planning and who we could reach out to for help. 3 names came to mind, and we were excited. Set up a meeting with Teresa to discuss what the next steps would be. Then I reached out to this person, and we had a meeting, and he was very receptive to helping me with the walk for the next few months and using his connections with our local ministerium to help find me a replacement. To say that I was grateful is an understatement, and my prayers are being answered, and I rejoiced in that. Less than a week later after that meeting, I was contacted by one of my team members. Great news, she found me my replacement. I quickly set up a meeting with Teresa and now 2 new coordinators to set a plan in motion to transfer the leadership with me staying on as co-coordinator for 2021. The 3 of us, along with our incredible team, coordinated our walk. We had a strong turnout, and I got to proudly announce my new team members. Now I have our new coordinator that I so desperately prayed for, plus a bonus. I have a contact to bridge the gap between our lay-led walk and our ministerium that we had lost that connection for the past several years. In Corinthians, 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7 reads, "For we walk by faith, not by sight." And I am a firm believer in living by faith. I believe that we are placed here in this moment as part of God's plan. Things might not go according to your plan, and it will not be an instant result. But if you do not lose faith, you continue to pray, and are open to receiving, God will provide. So thank you very much, everybody. I hope that you find encouragement through this and you're inspired for your planning of your walks for 2022. And I wish you all the best of luck in the future. Thank you.
I love that she says 2022 and 2023, but bless Mary Long's heart for doing that for us. Next, we're going to have Minnie Stevens, and she is from the Lincoln, Nebraska Crop Hunger Walk. And this one is recorded more as an interview with the community engagement specialist for that walk, Tiffany Detain. And with that, I'll get that one started for us.
Well, thank you all for being here today with us. We're excited to have Minnie Stevens here to share a little bit more about her walk and her involvement in the Crop Hunger Walk and the way that they handle succession planning. So Minnie, can you first tell me what walk you're with and how long you've been involved in Crop Hunger Walks?
Okay, I walk with the Lincoln Lancaster Crop Hunger Walk. And I've been involved as a walker since the early 1990s.
Wow.
And been involved with the planning committee only 6 years. And then also I helped another church that I was involved in and worked for with the crop walk with them wherever they needed me.
Okay, so you have a long history of Crop Hunger Walks.
Yes, I do.
How many miles did you walk at your first Crop Hunger Walk?
3 miles.
All right. All right. So can you share a little bit more about how you became a part of your current planning committee? Were you approached by someone? Did you approach the committee and ask to join?
I received, our church actually, Bethany Christian Church, received a letter, and it was passed on to me by the pastor. And I connected and contacted the person that had sent the letter, Sandy Lashaw.
Mm-hmm.
And Sandy invited me to come and join them to see what it was like and things like that.
Okay, very cool. And what was your first role when you joined the walk planning committee?
Actually, they just let me kind of observe what was going on
Okay,
and stuff like that.
awesome. And did you serve in any other roles after that before you became the event coordinator?
When they needed help, I went over there and helped her with, what do I want to say? Putting out t-shirts and helping hand out t-shirts. And
Sure.
she even had me help them register.
Okay.
And she says, you can register too, because you need to go for a walk. So I went for a walk as everybody left, and we could easily go for our walks and stuff like that.
Okay, so you were just willing to jump in and help wherever was needed.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so how did it end up that you started to serve in the event coordinator role?
They were looking for another church because the 3 years was up for First Lutheran. And I says, let me check with our pastor and see what he would say. When I asked Daryl says, absolutely. And so, and he says, you will be the coordinator. So I am the coordinator.
Wonderful, wonderful. And how does your committee tend to approach the recruitment of new volunteers to join your team?
We send out a letter in April. And in that letter, of course, it tells them about the walk. We also invite them, if anybody, they have a volunteer that would like to serve on the planning committee, or would like to be a host church for the walk.
Okay.
And unfortunately, right now, we haven't heard back from any churches.
Okay. So what's your usual next steps if you haven't heard back? Do you call churches? Do you set up meetings?
We try to contact churches that we know of that might be willing to want to host.
Sure.
And that, and I've been contacting 2 or 3 other churches recently.
Okay.
To see if they would like to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. And speaking to that, so your walk operates under kind of this 3-year rotational model, right? So can you tell everyone with us, what does that look like?
Well, that church hosts for 3 years. And we have several people on the planning committee that stay on there. In fact, most of them have been on it for a number of years. And so that kind of helps with continuity, and that helps.
Yeah.
And one of them at one time or another has actually probably served as a event coordinator. Right. And that helps give you some idea. One of the other things we do is we set up a timeline.
Okay.
First meeting. And that gives, and then we also assign at the first meeting who wants to do what. We give them an opportunity to step in, and a lot of them want to do the same thing they've been doing.
Sure.
And with that timeline, it tells you you're going to do this or you're going to do that by a certain time, and that helps us a lot. Yeah. Because we can kind of stick to it. We have meetings every month by Zoom now, but not every month. Once in a while in the summertime, we take a break. Sure. Far enough ahead. But that does help us. Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to plan and make everyone feel comfortable about what they're getting into. And one of the things too, we have learned to keep the same design on our t-shirt, the 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
We get some different sponsors and stuff, that's fine. We can change the back.
Right.
And that helps.
Yeah. No, that's great. And so do I understand correctly that the new event coordinator and the church host, usually that event coordinator is a member of that community?
Usually they're a member of the host church
Okay. Okay. Great.
and that.
And when do you guys start that conversation about the transition after the 3 years to a new location and walk coordinator?
We try to do it in the second year. And
Okay.
many of us have reached out to some churches last year. We haven't gotten answers back from them.
Sure. Sure.
And when I send that letter out in April as the event coordinator to mark their calendars for the October walk, I am going to ask if there's anybody that would be interested in being on the planning committee.
Yeah,
The more we have, the better it is.
definitely. That's great.
And if their church would like to host it.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the benefits under operating under a 3-year model like you all do?
It keeps the coordinator from getting burned out.
Mm-hmm.
It also gives them an opportunity to switch different areas in town to walk.
Mm-hmm.
And this past year, we added about 1.5 mile walk. So anybody that needed to and made it more handicap accessible.
Wonderful.
And one reason is we had a gentleman that had walked the walk for about 45 years.
Mm-hmm.
He lost one of his legs and he's in a wheelchair. And not last year in 22, but in 21, he was able to have somebody push him and he went for a walk. He went
Wonderful.
for all 3 miles and we found out there wasn't everything that was handicap accessible, but
Yeah.
they
Well, but
managed.
good for you all for thinking about ways to make it more accessible to others. That's great.
Because they have the right to go for a walk.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find that because you switch locations, more people from the host church get involved when their church is the hosting church and the new event coordinators from their community?
They do. They get more involved. We've actually added 2 members from my church onto the planning committee.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them became the publicity one. And last year, Lenny got to talk to Channel 8, which is one of our local channels,
Wow.
about the walk.
That's
Which-
awesome.
Which made it nice
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great.
and good publicity.
Right? Good publicity for sure. In your model that you have with the 3-year rotation, do you ever overlap with event coordinators or what does that
No.
look like?
We have not
Okay.
ever seen anything overlap.
Okay. So just kind of past event coordinators might serve as a resource if needed.
Yes.
Okay.
Because like
Great.
Sandy was the coordinator for First Lutheran.
Mm-hmm.
She was able to help me with some stuff. If I had questions, I could email her and she'd give me the answers.
That's great. Yeah. It's nice to have a little history, a little resource.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. Do you feel like this model is something that other crop hunger walks might benefit from giving a try?
I think it would,
Yeah.
because I'm sure a lot of them, some of them may be in small towns. Yeah, they may not be able to change their locations. But a
Right.
big town like Lincoln,
Mm-hmm.
it gives us an opportunity to see different parts of the city
Yeah.
and meet other people from other churches
Mm-hmm.
and maybe make some new friends too.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. Why do you think succession planning is important when we're thinking about your planning committees?
Mhm. Now, if you sit there and you can actually talk to people and get ideas how we can improve it, what
Mhm.
we cannot do. Like we said, we decided that we needed to make something that was a little handicap accessible for people.
Right, right.
And that made a big difference for us.
Yeah, so having all those resources and planning ahead helps you to be able to
Mhm.
think of other ways to involve people.
And we usually have a meeting after the walk in November
Hmm.
that we can look at and say, okay, is there something we can need to improve, something we need to take out?
Right.
And that helps.
Yeah.
And it also, then we can look at each other and say, when do we want to meet again?
Yeah. No,
And
that's
we've already
excellent.
set our date to start in March.
Yeah. No, that's so wonderful. Is there anything else that you feel like you want to share with our group here today about succession planning for Crop Hunger Walk teams?
Make sure that you inventory everything at the end of the walk, because some of the resources are the same.
Mhm.
Then you know the next year when you get ready to start, whoever orders your materials has that inventory and they'll know exactly what they've got to get.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Thank you. Well, I just want to thank you for taking your time to meet with me today, to share about your walk, to the way that you all plan and how you involve more churches in your community. I think it's great. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And you take care.
Thanks. You too.
Uh-huh.
I'm in love with Minnie. She's so sweet. Next, we are going to ask Roberta to bring up her camera, and I'm going to go off camera, and Roberta is going to talk about, she's going to give us a more rounded conversation. She's gonna tell us about her new Burn Crop Hunger Walk that's in North Carolina, but she's also gonna talk about a few other transition things that Walks for Her have done. And then before I let Roberta do her thing, please type in questions. Now, we don't have Mary or Minnie on, but we do have Church World staff. We have me, we have Teresa's on, and we have Roberta. So we can answer some questions for you. So go ahead and type those in, please. And with that, Roberta, I'll let you take over.
All right. Thanks, Heather. Thanks, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. The fact that you've joined this webinar hopefully means that you've thought about succession planning and or you have a plan already in place and you're looking for some new ideas. And the reason we're offering this webinar is because we at CWS believe that succession planning is so critical to the work that we do with Crop Hunger Walks around the country. Heather mentioned I'm Roberta Smith and I live in North Carolina. I work with Crop Hunger Walks, both in North Carolina as well as in Virginia, and I've had quite an experience with transitions in different walk committees. We've highlighted today transitions with our Crop Hunger Walk coordinators. What I would also offer to all of you is that you also think about succession planning for committee members, especially in those key positions like publicity and recruitment and the treasurer's positions. Those are all very, very important positions on a Crop Hunger Walk planning committee. So as you're thinking about succession planning, I hope that you will also consider not just the coordinator's position, which is really important, but also who are the other folks on the committee that we want to ensure some continuity should something happen, should life happen, and they need to step off for whatever reason. Also, I want to share that there really is no exact science to succession planning, and that's been my experience. It looks different in different communities. The most important thing to take away from here, from this webinar, is that one, it is important that we do want our Crop Hunger Walk committees to have a succession plan in place, and then also that there is a clear plan for that transition. What does that really look like? And we've heard from Minnie and Mary, and heard about their various transitions and how those transitions look different. I would like to share a little bit about a few of my walks and the way that they've handled their transition especially for the coordinator's position. And they've all looked, like I said, look very, very different. In one of my walk communities, we were expecting that the coordinator had taken on a new position, a new job, and we needed and was moving away from the area. We needed to identify a new person. And to be quite frank, this was a large crop hunger walk, and this committee decided that they would actually publish the coordinator's position, and advertise the coordinator's position and invite people to apply. And so we did that and received some interest in the position. There was an interview process. So it was sort of like this committee decided to approach this like a real job, and invited folks to come to an interview, and through that process, we're able to select a coordinator. In preparing that coordinator to take on that new role, we had asked the existing coordinator to stay on through the end of the Crop Hunger Walk year, to support that person in their new role, to make sure they were comfortable and confident with all of the different processes and all of the different activities that go into planning the Crop Hunger Walk. So that was really important, especially if you're working with a larger event. It can be pretty overwhelming to a volunteer who's coming in as a new volunteer to take on the role of planning that Crop Hunger Walk. I always, when I talk about Crop Hunger Walk events, I always say that they're quite a production, and it requires all hands and hearts on board to make sure that they're successful, that the planning happens well, and that no one person feels overwhelmed with all of the tasks that are required to put on the walk. In another one of my communities, I actually went out to do a congregational visit with an associate pastor at a church, and in that meeting learned so much about her, and learned about the fact that she had participated in Crop Hunger Walks since she was a little girl. Her dad had pushed her in a wagon to be a part of the Crop Hunger Walk, and her father had served as a walk coordinator in the city where she grew up. So she had a long history of participating in the Crop Hunger Walk. And this was a staff visit with a congregation, and I was able to learn so much about this associate pastor. And as it turned out, in another year or so, we were experiencing some transition on that planning committee where the coordinator was stepping off, and we needed a new coordinator. And so I thought about this associate pastor and reached out to her and invited her to join the committee, but invited her to join the committee in the role of a coordinator. And of course, she agreed to do that, and is doing an amazing job today as the coordinator for the Roanoke Valley Crop Hunger Walk. So kudos, Janet, for all of the amazing work that you do. I did mention that I wanted to highlight the transition process that happened for my New Bern Crop Hunger Walk. And New Bern is in Eastern North Carolina. It's an amazing city. For those of you who've never visited, I encourage you to visit New Bern. But several years ago, the coordinator that I had worked with for maybe about 5 years decided that he needed to step off for personal reasons, needed to step off as coordinator for the walk. And he reached out to me, and we met for lunch and talked about just what that might look like. And I asked him if he would help me to identify a person in the local community who had the personality and just the right skill set to coordinate a group of volunteers. And so he began to work to identify a person in the local community and was able to do that, and identified a wonderful, wonderful, the person who was the volunteer coordinator for the local agency. And so she came aboard and really quickly jumped into her role. One of the critical things about that transition was that he stayed on as coordinator to support her transition. And once again, like I said early on, I think that's such an important part of the succession planning. And that is, if we have a person who has worked in that role, whether it's as a treasurer or a publicity chair or recruitment chair or a coordinator, that the new person who's coming on to take over that role has some support and is mentored or is shadowed by that existing volunteer. And so when we're able to organize our transition in that way, it allows for a much smoother transition. It allows everyone to be comfortable in their new role, to prepare the committee for new volunteers. So that's such a critical part of what we do. I think the other thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned that this is something that Mary said in her recording, was she described it as vision mapping. So many of our planning committees, they have an evaluation meeting at the end of the Crop Hunger Walk. And in some cases, some of our committees have a planning retreat at the very beginning of the planning year. And so I would encourage our planning committees to incorporate succession planning either at the evaluation wrap-up meeting or as a part of the retreat or vision mapping for the new year, to kind of begin to think about should life happen for one of our volunteers and they're unable to continue in their role through the remainder of the year, that we're thinking ahead about who might be a good fit for that particular role. So once again, succession planning is such a critical part of our process in planning the Crop Hunger Walk. I encourage all of our teams to think about it and use the CWS staff person as a resource. We are, for those of us who travel, we are active in your community. We are able to meet with new volunteers. And so if there is a need, if you identify a person who might be a good fit for the coordinator's position or another position on the committee, I urge you to also include your CWS staff person in on that conversation. Your staff person is able to support you by coming into the community and meeting with that volunteer, kind of going through the different tasks that are that person might be responsible for, and also so that the new volunteer is aware that there is really good support from CWS as they take on their new role. Because as I said, this could be pretty overwhelming for someone who might be new to Crop Hunger Walk. So we're so grateful to our coordinators and our other volunteers that continue in their roles for many, many, many years. But we also recognize that there might be time when there are times when change is necessary, and when that change happens, we want to be prepared to ensure that there's a new person to take over the role. So I'm going to stop here and invite Heather to share, ask questions, to tell us if there are questions in the chat box.
Yeah, go ahead and please type in any questions. There are a couple, but the first one is asking about Teresa and Tiffany's walks. So if they wouldn't mind unmuting or possibly putting on cameras to help us answer questions, that would be great. But we can skip that one while they decide. And oh, well, there's Tiffany.
Hello.
And there's Teresa. Okay, well, the first question is actually by the man who hired me, Bob Barnhart, who's retired from Church World Service, but is the leader of the Greater Lansing Crop Hunger Walk. And his question was to Tiffany and Teresa, you know, well, even you, Roberta, how big is New Bern? How big are the walks that you guys highlighted with Mary and Minnie?
Gotta pull out my spreadsheet now.
Henrich is number 62 that year and top of cream of the crop. It's at 30,000 average income, and it has 12 to 18 congregations who actively participate each year.
Okay, and Tiffany is fairly new, and she's not going to know that off the top of her head like Teresa. So, Roberta, how about New Bern? What is New Bern size?
Yeah, so New Bern would be considered a mid-size crop hunger walk. They raised over 30,000 this past year. The coordinator has done a fantastic job of recruiting new volunteers to serve on the planning committee, and new volunteers that have specific roles. So clearly defined roles has been really important for that community. But they have a committee, I would say about 10 or 12 people that support the planning for the crop event.
Okay. We have a question. Have you ever involved youth in the planning committee? And my brain is saying, Teresa, you need to take this one.
Okay. Yes, not with Henrich, but with another walk, Red Bank Crop Hunger Walk. Sometimes the youth groups is part of the planning committee, and they are part of it as well. It's actually the youth groups are the one that renew their membership more frequently, and it becomes more difficult because sometimes, you know, kids, they grow up, they move over to other places, but they are part of the process. And something that I would like to add is that we keep thinking about events as just the event, and let's use this workshop, this webinar, as an invitation to see this as a process, that it also includes that succession planning in the same way that we plan the walk day, and to celebrate, you know, the accomplishment of the year, but also how we are going to bring new people to the system, to this living thing that is our community, that it only gives loves to everybody out.
Absolutely, Teresa, I agree. Yep. I think succession planning should be incorporated as a part of the annual goals for the walk. When you meet to kind of discuss the fundraising goal and the number of walkers that you are looking to have at the walk, I think it's important to also include that as a part of the agenda as well.
And Tiffany, did you have the size for your walk now?
I do, yeah. So I'm like not even 3 months in for those who are listening. So I'm still memorizing all of my kind of makeups of my wonderful walks that I get to work alongside of. And so the Lincoln Lancaster walk has about a team of about 12 on their planning team. And then they tend to have about 250 walkers and raise over $20,000. So that's kind of the range that community's walk is in.
Okay, well, Bob has added another question. During the strategic planning meeting that happens early in the year, if you are planning all year, or at an evaluation meeting afterwards, I mean, what does the succession planning portion look like for those two areas?
Can you repeat the areas?
Like your first meeting of the year and your evaluation meeting at the end of the year. What do the three of you suggest that should look like?
So at the evaluation meeting, I think it's important to schedule your evaluation meeting at a time when the majority of the committee is able to be present, and you get some commitment from them. Find out from committee members who are present at that meeting what their intentions are for the next year. If they're planning to continue to serve as a committee member, if they're planning to continue to serve in their current role, whether it's recruitment or publicity or as coordinator. So get that commitment from them early, because when you have those conversations early, then you know early that there is a need to identify a new volunteer for those roles. So my preference and my suggestion would be that that conversation happens at the wrap-up or evaluation meeting, even before you begin the conversation, you initiate the conversation in the new planning year. But if you don't have that and you need to begin that conversation in the new walk planning year, typically the coordinator sends out an email blast to committee members saying, you know, it's time for us to begin planning the Crop Hunger Walk. I'd like to schedule our first meeting. Who's on board? And usually you'll get a response back from committee members that I'm not going to be able to serve this year, or yeah. So if that's what you get, then you know that you need to begin to prepare for a new volunteer. Begin to identify quickly someone who could fill those positions. I'm sorry, Teresa, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were.
I also think that throughout the course of the year that, you know, these events are all about building relationships in our community. And so I think during the course of the year that we're constantly connecting with team captains and local ministers in the community. And we can also keep in the back of our minds those folks who we feel like would be a really good fit, who have a strong connection to the mission of Church World Service and might be a really good addition that we would enjoy working with. And that's how I felt about Janet in Roanoke when I met her, when I had that meeting, a congregational visit with her, and I sat there and listened to her, and her energy was just amazing. And I thought, wow, it would be so great to have this kind of energy on our planning committee. So I think during the course of the year that we should constantly be in that succession planning mode, where we're thinking as we engage with volunteers and just people in the community, who is out there that you really feel a sense of connection and feel like this work, this ministry could be really meaningful for them, and who you might want to invite to be a part of the planning.
What I was going to say is that Nancy Buckner is in the room. I know you have problems with the audio, but I wish you could hear her. She is the recipient of this transition, so she's leading the new walk. And one of the things that they have done very well is that they have incorporated the interfaith ministerium in part of the recruitment process. And that has helped just not only to recruit new people to the committee, but also to spread the word that this is an important activity for the community that not only happen once a year, but during the year, they are those who are the volunteers and the face of this effort for the local partners as well. Because once a year, we raise funds for the rest of the world and we split it with the local, but the rest of the year, they are the volunteers, they are the people who are assisting and giving that extra hand in the community. So sorry, Nancy, we cannot hear you, but if you want to correct or edit or include something, please do it in the chat.
I do have, well, we have two more questions, but so let's do this one. How common are core coordinators in the model for the walks? Do you ladies have co-coordinators or do you mostly just have coordinators?
Actually, Nancy has recruited already a co-coordinator, and the way they started was Mary was looking for, as she described in the video, and it was Nancy and another person. They started as co-coordinators with her, and then the transition continued. Now Nancy is the leading person, and Nancy now have a new co-coordinator with her.
Yeah, there are times when it's really difficult to recruit a coordinator if that's a position that's needed for the crop walk. And so in those times, I've offered to my planning committee that we identify two persons who could co-coordinate the walk. Crop Hunger walks are quite a production. I'll say that again, to organize. And so I think having a partner, having a co-coordinator just kind of eases that stress a little bit on a volunteer, where they have someone who can kind of carry some of the weight of planning and organizing the Crop Hunger Walk event. So in cases where you are recruiting a new coordinator and you're having some struggles with that, I think offering that as an option is an excellent way of getting volunteers to commit, because I think people would quicker commit to being a co-coordinator for a Crop Hunger Walk event than having a person who's wanting to commit to this event as a single person, a single volunteer organizing the event.
I would agree. It's always easier to get a job done with two people than one. The last question that we have is just kind of a fun little question. I will let you ladies answer. We'll get it on the books here. Any suggestions on honoring retiring coordinators? Because, you know, they've done the work.
Something I would put forward if it's possible, and it depends on the person's personality. You know, if someone wants to be celebrated in a mass event, or if someone prefers something more personal based on their personality. But a great time to honor that individual is at the crop walk, right? That is their final crop walk. And I think taking a moment to honor just the investment that they made into the Crop Hunger Walk, into their local community, that's a great time to do that if possible.
Absolutely. I think also checking with your CWS staff person to see if there might be some CWS swag that you can offer for a coordinator who's transitioning from that role. There's some neat little gifts that we have at times in Elkhart that we can offer a coordinator. Also, if the coordinator is a member of a church, I would also suggest maybe sending a letter to the pastor and sharing a little bit about how important that person, the work that person has done on the planning committee has been in just impacting not just families locally, but also on a global scale. So I think having people honored in their congregation is, it can be pretty rewarding. And so that's another opportunity I think you can use to recognize a coordinator who's transitioning from their role.
All great ideas.
I
Oh,
wanted
go ahead,
to
Teresa.
mention one quick thing. When there are transition or changes in leadership, sometimes the new one, not the new person, just the group, they just want to start new things. My invitation is to honor the decisions that were made in the past, incorporate them, and take what things need to be changed, what needs to be improved, because we are always improving, but just for the sake of changing, not necessarily will bring the results we want. So as a way to thank and be grateful for the previous leader, just honor those decisions that were made in the past. And if you make changes, that they are informed, that everybody's part of why we are changing. It's not because this is a new leader and then we ignore what happened in the past. Sometimes it's needed, but sometimes we just need to go over the process of honoring why those decisions were made, why those people, why that person had to make that decision at the time. So that's another way to be grateful to those who were before us.
That's a great point, Teresa. Well, I believe we have come to the end, and I gotta say, girl power. I would like to thank everybody who joined us for the webinar. Again, I'd like to say that it is recorded. A link will be sent out. It was also asked in the questions for a timeline, and we do have new resources. And I'm sure there's a timeline in there, and I will find that, and I will have them add it to the link in the email you will receive from our marketing department, either tomorrow or Monday. And then I would like to thank Mary Long, Minnie Stevens, Roberta Smith, Teresa Centron, and our sweet, pretty darn new hire, Tiffany Detain. And if you can see her Kansas Jayhawks, she's currently in the state of Washington, but she's shifting to Kansas to cover all those Midwest states for us. So with that, thank you very much, and everybody have a wonderful day. And don't forget, it's National Pizza Day, so everybody just pick one up for dinner and have a nice night.
Happy
Bye.
succession planning, everyone.
I can.